रहीम रेडियो रमादान 87.7 FM से प्रोग्राम है रिफ्लेक्शंस। मैं हूं आपका होस्ट ज़ुबैर अकरम और हमेशा की तरह आज भी मेरे मेहमान हैं शेख रिजवान मोहम्मद। People who've just tuned in, this is Radio Ramadan 87.7 program Reflections with your host Zubair Akram and my guest Sheikh Ridwan Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So inshallah, 4th of Ramadan today, Sheikh. Yesterday we kind of started, not even concluded, I would say after an hour, we just almost started discussing the actual surah we want to do, which is Iqra, Surah Al-Alaq, and the first word, and the first letter. And we started with the Hamza, and the significance of Hamza, not even Iqra itself, and how that is important. And the importance of the first word Iqra and its relevance to the entire Quran and the relationship of Wahi with Insan and relationship of Wahi with the whole humanity, civilization. So there is a relationship that we will be exploring between the revelation and the way we live.
Has to be.
Yeah.
So I think
And the way we live is called civilization.
yes, civilization is so even to be civil is to be engaged with a number of people as a community. So civilization is an interesting idea. It's a very simple idea. It's just basically how we order ourselves politically, socially, economically, and in the modern age, religiously as well. So religion as a word actually is quite a modern word. It's not a classical. It doesn't have a genealogy going back in time, because everybody in the past was religious by definition. By default, people were religious. If you were part of a community, a tribe, a village, you were, I think you probably have to say it by extension, you were definitely going to be somebody who was religious in the sense that you belong to a community or a wider group of people. So when we talk about Islam, when we talk about the way that our faith kind of informs our lives, especially in this day and age, I think religion is quite an important element which is sidelined out of discourse, and it's quite interesting in our day-to-day lives how we understand that to be the case. Religion is not something that you speak about in public. It is something that is left to be some sort of life coaching exercise, or something that informs the way that you have some kind of personal development. It doesn't have any effect on the way that you decide what is right and what's wrong. And it's interesting that move only comes about when you take revelation out of the equation as being relevant to human beings, meaning that you cut human beings away from the millennia-old connection with faith in some way. So that is quite a fundamental break. This is a modern break. This is a break that you probably only, I would say, have seen properly since the mid 1960s. So it's very, very recent. I mean, it's within, if you're born in the 40s, 50s, most people probably listening are not, but if you were, then you've experienced a cataclysmic change in the way that human beings are ordered, how society is ordered. And so that is just one aspect of the problem that we face. And so what we were talking about yesterday is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was the final, it was going to be the beginning of the final stop in the process of revelation. So this was a whole line of prophecy, a whole line of revelation that came down to people to give them an insight into what the desire of the Creator was for them, their purpose, their telos, their ultimate aim and ultimate purpose in life. What is the purpose of life? What's the point of living? It's not something that essentially science or even the rational mind can come to a definite conclusion on. So we're left with an external source, in this case revelation, to tell us what that is. And yesterday what I was talking about was quite, I think, poignant and important, because from one perspective, Iqra is the first point in telling the real story of what the purpose of humanity is. Because previous revelations, I mean, I was listening to a podcast recently about a very prominent Jewish thinker in America, and he was asked about the authenticity of the Torah. Basically, an Orthodox Jew, so basically somebody who believes in the literal truth of the Torah, but insisted and had to accept that he doesn't know whether it was divinely revealed or whether it was a process of human construction, like human beings started to engage and explain what the revelation was in their own tongue, or it went through a process of editing and revision and change and kind of movement. All of that for us is different because in our religious tradition, what we have is a definite conviction based on evidence and based on not our own kind of research, but research of others, Orientalists, scholars in academia, for example, who say, yeah, well, what we Muslims read in Taraweeh, what we recite as worship, is exactly what was coming out of the mouth of this person who lived in Arabia at a certain point in history. What he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for us is the word of God. For them is his word. But the fact is that the moment it left his lips, it was recorded and came down to us exactly how it came down to him, or exactly how he wanted to make it, depending if you're a Muslim or not. But the point is that revelation is the first point in really giving you they talk about the editor's cut in movies, like the real version, like not the one that's been changed based on public opinion, not the one that's been edited and manipulated. This is the one that will tell you the real story of the human experience from the time of the first human being on earth that was cognizant of God, was given وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah says that we gave a revelation of all the names to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. We taught him them. From that point all the way to the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is what the Quran is. And it starts with that issue of Iqra. And so Iqra, as I said before yesterday, is like this kind of initial singularity, this kind of point of departure where everything that we recite, everything we reflect upon in the Quran as revelation, it will be now coming from this one source over a period of, what's fascinating, over a period of 23 years, not coming down like, here's the book, read it. Because what we were talking about yesterday was Iqra is a transitive verb, which means to read something. But what is given is not something. It is a kind of a spiritual experience of reading from what's being placed into your heart. نزل به الروح الأمين على قلبك لتكون من المنذرين. Allah says that we have revealed it to you, through the angel, the angel Jibreel, upon your heart. So it's not even he's reading it from a thing, he's reading it from what's imprinted within his heart. And all of that for what reason? لِتَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُنذِرِينَ, so that you become one of the people that warn. And so the Prophet ﷺ at this point becomes a person who is not just Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the trader, the merchant, the husband, the father, the Amin, who was known amongst his community, would have been one amongst thousands of people in human history that was known amongst their community as being a good person. But at that point he becomes Nadir, and he becomes by default Al-Bashir as well, because at that point he is given two flags of introduction to humanity, which is that he is a person that warns people. And now the whole point of warning is like something's going to happen if you don't do something. That's the whole point of warning. If you know what a warning is, that's what it means. And the other aspect of warning is of that aspect of the Prophet ﷺ is to give bushra, which is to give good tidings of something. In other words, it's like the old adage of the carrot and the stick. You entice people through something, and you also warn them through something else. You warn them of a danger that's impeding them. And Nadir in Arabic comes from an amazing root, which has to do with the sound you hear from the arrow leaving the bow at the moment it's hit. The moment that you pull back the string and you fire the arrow, that ting is called in Arabic nadira. It's like that kind of that kind of very sharp, but also at the same time dull sound. And then, the moment, the point that it leaves the bow to hitting the prey, it's not enough time for the prey to realize it needs to move. And the Prophet is the nadir in that sense. So whatever this revelation is going to be, it's going to have to inform the way that you live. It's going to have to inform the way you make decisions. Because if somebody's giving you a warning and enticing you with good and glad tidings, the whole point of that obviously is to do something. If you go and drive down a road and there's a sign up and it says stop, the whole point of the sign is not to embellish the road and give it a bit of color and so it looks nice when you're driving. If you don't act upon it, something happens. Do you understand? So the whole point is Muslim civilization is going to be informed by the fact that we will always look to what the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet say. We're always going to look back to what this person said to inform any decision we make, any conversation we have. Like myself, any conversation I have, subconsciously, I always think, what would the Prophet say? Or what would the Prophet want me to do? Because I know that throughout human history, there's been people that have advised us on different things, scientists telling you what to eat and drink. There's economists telling you where to invest your money. And there's people that tell you how to live a good life. And so me as a person, I think to live a good life is very important. It's right at the top of my agenda. And so who's telling me what to do in terms of live my life? Is it myself? I know I get things wrong all the time. I make value judgments that are incorrect all the time. And human frailty is such that everybody makes those mistakes all the time. And so Iqra is telling us, basically, there is a place after the rational mind where it takes the rational mind with it and it gives it more. So in other words, where our mind stops and comes to a conclusion and it says we don't know the answer, revelation comes with something slightly different. This is what Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he talks about reason and thinking and rationality. And he talks about revelation. And he says this is nurun ala nur, this is light upon light. The light of reason added to the light of revelation. And this is the thing that Islam brought with Iqra, which is it tied and said, look guys, you've got this amazing ability to think, and it's been taught by God, and to be able to enumerate the human capacity to think, and then to name things and to order things and to study things and then to count things and calculate and then build. But added to that is the fact that there's nothing that you can come to which is moral in that process. Morality, what's good and what's not, is ultimately going to be outside your hands. And that's where revelation comes in. It doesn't go against rationality. It doesn't go against the human impulse to think. It channels it, and it also augments it. It embellishes it. It strengthens it. And so the human being as a full entity, as a total entity, we're made of body and soul, we come at ease. And so the Prophet ﷺ is the one that's coming with the warning and the glad tidings as a perfect balance. And that's what I think is very interesting about the Prophet ﷺ himself, is that he was balanced in all these aspects of his constitution. That the revelation is telling us to balance the rational and the revelationary, and the Prophet ﷺ is the person who is perfectly balanced in all ways. If you look at Sirah, if you look at Shama'il, if you look at his qualities, he was a mother to his children, at the same time as being a father to his children. And that motherly quality, we were talking yesterday about the Prophet being Nabil Ummi, the Prophet who is unlettered meaning cannot decipher signs. Doesn't mean as a negative discrepancy or disability. It means that whatever he's doing now is going to be from somewhere other than his own intellect, his own mind, his own capacity to decipher. And I think you were intimating yesterday that this is an amazing proof that the Quran is in itself a miracle, the greatest miracle, because it comes from a person who didn't gather information from other places. He didn't look about and say, "Oh, that's a nice passage. I'll take that." And I like this quote. I'll take this, and I'll make. And he'll sit there and edit. And he was somebody. It just came to him. And and then what came to him is consistent. That's the thing the Quran provides. The Quran provides numerous reasons why this book is from God. The first is it just challenges people, as in the simplest way. In kuntum fi raybin mimma nazzalna ala abdina fa'tu bi suratin min mithlihi. And if you have any doubt about this being revealed to our messenger, our servant, ala abdina, fa'tu bi suratin min mithlihi, just bring a chapter like it, O Arabs who are the masters of the Arabic language, the people that can rap in their language, on their feet. They couldn't do it. We're talking about 3 short sentences. They couldn't do it. And they tried. Not that they didn't try, they tried. Because do you not think that if the Quran and the Prophet ﷺ are such a challenge to their society, turning the economic system upside down, turning their ownership of slavery upside down, turning their relationship with women upside down, all these things being turned upside down, and they had the opportunity to destroy it, do you not think they would bring the three verses? I mean, they would have. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Your enemy's doing something and you can dismiss them in the simplest way. Would you not do that? They didn't do it. They couldn't do it. And Allah says also, if it was from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا, you would have found so many inconsistencies within it, if it was from other than God. The proofs that the Quran says itself to prove its own divine nature are ones that you can analyze and you can study and you can prove or disprove yourself as a human being. And that's what's fascinating about the Quran, is it gives people the code to destroy it. The Quran gives its enemies the code to destroy it and says, here's a code, try and destroy it. It can't do it. They've never tried. And so what this person will come with, the Prophet ﷺ, will be something that is unimaginable for ourselves. Because if you think about Iqra, if you just think of the word Iqra, the first revelation, which is the first of a whole ocean of revelation that will come to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it's a majestic, bal huwa Qur'anun Majid fi lawhin mahfuz. The Quran is a majestic Quran, something that is beyond our capacity to emulate. Majestic meaning it has king-like qualities. Majd is a word which indicates something that is powerful and auspicious and
Majid.
worthy of. Sorry?
Majid, Quran Majid.
Yeah, Majid. And Majd, the root of it is this idea of power, but also auspiciousness and regality and royalty. But the thing is, fi lawhin mahfuz, it's in, at that point, at the initial point, the Quran and its revelation meanings is in a protected tablet. It's just there. It's not stagnant, but it's there in a way that we can't imagine. And then this month, which is the month of Ramadan, Allah says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. It's in this month that the Quran starts to be not static in this kind of tablet of light, but it starts to be sent slowly. So unzila actually means the whole thing to come. And this is like the scholars talk about it as being all the Quran was transformed from the guarded tablet to the lowest heavens, but it's still static. It's not being interacted with. It's not connecting with anybody. But the moment that it comes and starts being, drip fed to the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then describes it in Arabic in a very interesting way. And this is why, the Quran requires deliberation. Allah says, وَإِنَّهُ لَتَنزِيلُ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. It is indeed a slow, tanzil is like the slow uncoupling of revelation down to you. نزل به روح الأمين, that has been sent and by the blessed, trustworthy soul, which is the angel Jibreel, على قلبك لتكون من المنذرين. And so this is done so that you become one of those people that are warning. And this is what's interesting. Tanzil, it's now going to be 23 years of constant revelation to the Prophet ﷺ.
Tanzil is what, drip feeding?
Yeah, Tanzil is like, not, Nazla is like to give you everything at one time.
Gradual.
Yeah. And Nazzala, Tanzila, in this kind of, you can even hear it, the kind of the emphaticness of the Shadda. in nazzala tanzilan, comes from this idea that it's going to be something that is going to be a constant, and it's going to be over a period of time. And so even the word, when it talks about the Prophet ﷺ being given it, it doesn't say, here, take it, read it. Now, what he's going to read is not something that so imagine that you're going on a journey and you don't know where you're going, and you don't know what's around the corner. This is what's happening with the Prophet ﷺ. It for him is a journey of discovery as well, for him as a person. His blessed state is being elevated. Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi mentions that the prophets are elevated through their experience of revelation, not as robots, in terms of they can't do anything wrong. They are in themselves going through a journey in which they are experiencing challenges and decisions and heartache and elation and happiness and also intense sadness. All the human experiences that everyone here feels. Yet sometimes you have elation that you're so happy, and then sometimes there's such sadness that you can't feel that you can remain on earth. The Prophet is going to go through all these things, and it's going to be captured in front of everybody, in full view of everybody. Because there's no person, if you think about it, if you think about any person in human history whose life has been recorded and analyzed and subjected to scrutiny like the Prophet ﷺ. Not even take Biden. What did Biden do yesterday? You probably don't know. If you knew what Biden did yesterday, you would insist that he has no connection with that red button on his table where he can initiate a nuclear war. But we don't know. This is the most powerful man. I mean, powerful in these kind of colloquial, whose life should be scrutinized to the utmost from beginning to end, from the moment he wakes up to the moment he sleeps, and also in his sleep. We know what the Prophet was like in his sleep as well. And think of that. That's a person who is wielding so much power, and yet when he speaks, it's edited. I mean, when he speaks, if the American public knew how he spoke, they would run to have impeachment process initiated on him, because he's unable to function as a human being, unfortunately, because of his age. Now, that is somebody that you would imagine has the complete disclosure. He doesn't. The Prophet had that from his time to this time, recorded with varied narrations and all the way that you can record it has been recorded. And yet we will now see 23 years of his life being played out in front of our eyes. The good and the better. We don't see the good and the bad and the ugly, because the Prophet ﷺ is nothing but the best. But in terms of, you get everything that any critic can ever, take and use against him is going to be in front of us. And so the 23 years is such an amazing thing. It's such a human aspect that I think sometimes if the Prophet was given the book in one go, and he was given Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, all the way to wattaqu yawman turja'una fihi ila Allah, to the end, last revelation, all that in one go, he would just say, here's the book, guys, it's from God, good luck. But he doesn't. He has to get some verses and live according to them, and everyone's watching him and saying, is he living according to them or not? Is he fair or not? Is he just? Is he merciful? Is he compassionate? Is he clement? And they're going to scrutinize him. His wives are going to scrutinize him. His children are going to scrutinize him. And
so we're going to go for a break. But before we go into a break, my thought process says to me to ask you that, okay, so we are spectators. We are watching the life of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to see what's there to emulate, to what degree we should be emulating. How do we inform our lives through his life? How do we live? And the connection between the surah that we have chosen and his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. He's asked to read. He is asked to read, and he can't read. We know he can't read. And then there are ayahs that follow that. I'm going to play those ayahs now, go for a break, and come back for this discussion, inshallah.
جو سر بسر ہے کلام ربی، وہ میرے آقا کی زندگی ہے، یہ سب تمہارا کرم ہے آقا۔ عمل کی میرے اساس کیا ہے، عمل کی میرے، عمل کی میرے اساس کیا ہے، بجز ندامت کے پاس کیا ہے، عمل کی میرے اساس کیا ہے، بجز ندامت کے پاس کیا ہے، رہے سلام
for the soul.
Awarded the UK's Best Muslim Charity of the Year, Muslim Global Relief, bringing hope to life for 20 years in over 40 countries around the world. Every water pump you helped to install, every needy person you helped to feed, every orphan child that you sent to school has a powerful impact on people's lives. Let us continue to make change. Make a 100% zakat donation today. Visit muslimglobalrelief.org.
راستے کتنے ہی مشکل کیوں نہ ہو، جب کوئی ساتھ دے تو منزل مل ہی جاتی ہے۔ غزالی ایجوکیشن ٹرسٹ گزشتہ 25 سالوں سے لاکھوں بچوں کو اسکول میں لا چکا ہے۔ آپ کی مدد سے پاکستان آگے بڑھ سکتا ہے، ہر بچہ پڑھ سکتا ہے۔
اگر آپ کو یا آپ کے کسی جاننے والے کو ٹائپ 2 شوگر کی تشویش ہوئی ہے یا ٹائپ 2 شوگر کے خطرے سے دوچار ہے تو ہماری ٹیم NHS گریٹر گلاسگو اینڈ کلائیڈ میں آپ کو مزید سیکھنے اور اپنی شوگر کو کنٹرول کرنے میں مدد کر سکتی ہے۔ ہم آپ کو مختلف خدمات کی مدد سے حمایت کر سکتے ہیں اور ضرورت پڑنے پر انٹرپریٹر بھی فراہم کرتے ہیں۔ ہمارے پاس اردو، پنجابی اور عربی میں بھی وسائل موجود ہیں۔ مزید جاننے کے لیے ہماری ویب سائٹ www.nhsggc.scot T2 ڈائبٹیز ہب پر جائیں یا ہمارے ہب پر کال کریں 0141-531-8901۔
Radio Ramadan 365, the heart of Scottish Muslim radio all year round. Tune into our new frequency, 15:30 AM.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
Recite in the name of your Lord who created.
خلق الإنسان من علق.
Created man from a clinging substance.
اقرأ وربك الأكرم.
Recite, and your Lord is the most generous.
الذي علم بالقلم.
Who taught by the pen.
علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
Taught man that which he knew not.
كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى.
No, but indeed man transgresses.
أن رآه استغنى.
Because he sees himself self-sufficient.
إن إلى ربك الرجعى.
Indeed, to your Lord is the return.
أرأيت الذي ينهى.
Have you seen the one who forbids?
عبدا إذا صلى.
a servant when he prays.
أرأيت إن كان على الهدى
Have you seen if he is upon guidance
أو أمر بالتقوى
or enjoins righteousness?
أرأيت إن كذب وتولى
Have you seen if he denies and turns away?
ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى
Does he not know that Allah sees?
كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية
No. If he does not desist, we will surely drag him by the forelock.
ناصية كاذبة خاطئة
A lying, sinning forelock.
فليدع ناديه
Then let him call his associates.
سندع الزبانية
We will call the angels of hell.
كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب
No, do not obey him, but prostrate and draw near to Allah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Radio Ramadan Reflections with Sheikh Rizwan Muhammad. Surah Al-Alaq is what you heard. पढ़ो अल्लाह के नाम से जो रहमान और रहीम है, और फिर कहा गया पढ़ो ए नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम अपने रब के नाम के साथ जिसने पैदा किया जमे हुए खून के एक लोथड़े से इंसान की तख्लीक की। पढ़ो और तुम्हारा रब बड़ा करीम है जिसने कलम के ज़रिए से इल्म सिखाया, इंसान को वो इल्म दिया जिसे वो ना जानता था। शेख, so it is one of those surahs which is, I am genuinely confused that I really want to explore this with you in this session here. The relationship between Iqra, Ummi, and Prophet ﷺ being our example. You know, he's been asked to read. I can't understand what this means now. He's been asked to read. He can't read. He is unlettered. He's Ummi. And there are nats after nats after nats, which are praising the fact, Nabiyon mein Ummi lakab paane wala, you know, Suwe Hira se aya. So all, you know, there is salam after salam after salam. Many poets, they have addressed this. That he alayhi salatu wasalam is praised because he's Ummi. He didn't know anything, but he knew everything. And yet he's asked to read. So what is he going to read?
You're confusing me.
So he can't read, and he's been commanded Iqra.
Yes.
And how's he going to read?
Well, this is the whole story, isn't it? I don't think we went through the story of the revelation, but the Prophet ﷺ is in this state of seclusion and contemplation and uzla. And this, in fact, Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, he has a very famous book called Al-Hikam, Al-Ata'iyya, in which he talks about very deep spiritual things. And he says, ما نزل القلب مثل عزلة دخل بها ميدان الفكر. The human heart, which is the human consciousness and the ability to understand what's right and wrong, has never benefited from anything more than it's benefited from uzla, which is seclusion, through which it enters into the realm of reflection. So the Prophet was in a reflective mode. Most people in the reflective, they come up with good or bad things because they're left to their own devices. You can go into a room or go into yourself and just go on walks and then come back to the conclusion about your life. And it could be the right or wrong answer. You know, you could convince yourself that something's right because you reflect upon it, and it could be wrong. But the Prophet goes into the state of reflection and seclusion, goes away from his family, Khadija al-Kubra radiyallahu anha, and his family, and takes sustenance for days at a time. And then he's visited by an experience which we now know is the experience of the angel Jibreel coming to him in his angelic form, and to show him that this is going to be extraordinary. He comes to him physically. The angels are not physical, but they can take physical form, and comes to him physically, and the Prophet says that he shook me and squeezed me until I got to the end of my ability to survive, and he let him go, and he says Iqra. So the calling card of the angel Jibreel is read, and it's answering your question, which is the Prophet could not read, and so he's as surprised as you are, and as confused as you are at this moment in time, and as confused as I am being when you question me on these things. He's saying, "Ma ana biqari," I'm not a person who can decipher signs, read. So his initial thing is, look, this is what I am. I'm not. I'm ma ana biqari. I'm. You could translate in different ways. You could say, ma ana biqari could mean I'm not going to read. And this is what Imam Al-Halabi in his Sirah Al-Halabiyya mentions from a lot of the early scholars, is that when the Prophet says ma ana biqari, it happens again, because the angel comes and he shakes him and he says ma ana biqari, either I can't read, I won't read, or what shall I read? And it happens again. 3 times this experience happens, which is giving life to the confusion which is there in front of the Prophet ﷺ, which is that he's not a person that knows how to read. But scholars say, look, what happens is that he goes through the experience and he comes to, he works through the confusion by saying, I'm not going to read, who are you? He's surprised, first of all, that there's somebody else there or something else there. He's just there to reflect, and there's something else there, and he's surprised, and he almost like fights back. The Prophet almost is fighting back and saying, Ma ana biqari, I'm not going to read, which is one of the translations of it. Ibn Jinni and other Al-Farisi mentions this as well, the variations of ma ana biqari. And then it happens again, and he says the same thing. But scholars say when he says it the second time, we can understand that he's saying, because he sees it's a serious, almost life-threatening for him situation, he feels it's life-threatening. He says, I can't read. It's like you're now, it's almost as if now you can't deal with this. You might as well try and cover your back and offer an excuse rather than fighting back. Ma ana biqari, I can't read. I'm sorry, I can't read. And the other aspect will be the third time it happens is the scholars say that he says, what he gives in and he says, what shall I read? And so the confusion you have is the confusion the Prophet had about, I can't read. Like, reading is a rarity, it's a luxury amongst the Arabs. They can speak, they can recite poetry, they can appreciate the fineness of language and its use, and they actually excel in the fineness of language and its use. And they actually, because it's a backwater, I said previously, Arabia is a backwater. Languages usually are preserved better when there's no passing through of other civilizations or peoples. You'll find that any place, any city where you have lots of people coming from outside, the original language deteriorates very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Drastically.
Like Dubai, for example. Can you find anybody in Dubai who speaks an Arab that speaks proper Arabic?
I forget Arabic.
I remember I used to try and do this with Arabs, like in Yemen, and I would say, okay, let's speak classical Arabic. And for about a minute, they would really struggle to keep up with doing it. And then they would just say, I'm sorry, it's too much work. I can't do it. And so the Arabs at that time weren't like that. They were preserved and they lived amongst themselves. And Imam, like Shafi, for example, spent about 20, I would say probably just less than 20 years in constant kind of connection with the Arab tribes, language-wise, stayed with them, lived with them. Like, he spent a lot of time with Bani Hudayl, which is one of the most pristine Arab dialects at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So he had all this access to the Arabic language. And now that's not the case. So the Prophet, when he's asked to read, he knows that he's not a person that can read. But, this is like this, there's a human aspect to this, which is the frailty the Prophet has. He gives up, he gives in, and he goes with the flow of the experience itself, which is, okay, let's just run with this. I can't read. I don't want to read. But okay, I'll read. Okay, you're insisting, it's not going to go away. And then once he says that, then the tap opens. That's at the moment he says, what shall I read? It's as if that's the point, I was talking about singularity. That's the point at which this massive explosion takes place. In the same way, the Hubble telescope showed us that, the universe is expanding. Once we realize it's expanding, it just explodes. And then from the explosion, you have this podcast is one of the many. Everything is that we know about is an explosion from this singularity. And for the Prophet, in the moment he says, "Ma ana biqari," what should I read? And the angel says, "Iqra," it's like you just have this expansion of meaning, which is every single thing that will inform the human soul from now until the end of time will now be uncovered. And also within that will be the whole reading the editor's cut of human history, of how human beings, even relevant to this day, absolutely relevant to this day, how people go off the path of justice and human just amicability, how they become tyrants, like the story of Pharaoh and Musa. Pharaoh and Moses is nothing more than a fight between not good and evil, but power and authority and people that are true and right. That's a story that goes, if you look at Pakistan now, if you look at Turkey now, you look at any country, whoever those people are that right, and the people that are the demagogues, that whoever you identify those people as being, the point is it's still essentially the same thing. People with power trying to suppress people who have no power. And then the whole story of humanity is that, and then the Quran is saying, look, Allah, the Creator, has something to say about this, has something to say about if you're enslaved in IMF debt, for example, and the system is there to preserve the privilege of the few and not the benefit of the many, then that's a system that God is telling you to resist, for example. And I'm giving you examples. This is why Revelation is so important, because it's going to tell you about how to deal with your husband, your wife, your child, your tribe, your community, your family, your nation, your civilization. It's going to tell everything. It's going to give you insight into every single thing. And so the human mind now, at this point in time, is saying, we don't want to do that. We just want to make it up as we go along, and then we'll make the mistakes, and then we'll have to clean up afterwards. Like, I was like this example of plastic. When they started to use plastic in societies in the 70s, 60s and 70s started becoming prevalent. And they said, this is amazing. You can make any shape you want. You can use it. You can throw it away. Wow, this is like the holy grail of everything we ever needed to do. And now what they're doing is they're realizing that elation of just running with an idea and implementing it is actually going to bring humanity to an end. It's going to get to the point where human beings cannot procreate because the process of procreation is affected by microplastics, which affect fertility. And this is the same satanic, I would say satanic mindset, which is saying, okay, you can be whatever you want. And if you feel like you're something, you're something. If you feel like you're a specific type of individual, you are that, even if the science says something completely opposite. And the topic is well known. Now, it sounds good now, doesn't it? Because you're just letting people do what they feel like. And because they feel like it, they should be able to do it. The age is the age of feeling, and you don't want to step on anybody's toes. And guess what? In a generation, what's going to happen is they talk about the everything coming back to haunt you in some way. That will come out of the closet at some point, and you will realize, oh, we shouldn't have done this a generation ago, because it was something that has brought our civilization to the brink of disaster, because it has so many ramifications.
So this warning that you're giving, or this observation that you're sharing, where humanity is going, and its relation with read in the name of your Lord who has created all that exists.
The relationship is obvious. The relationship is where you make decisions as societies. If it's not tied in with some input from revelation, you will go wrong. This is why Ibn Qayyim says, Nurun ala nur, light upon light. Revelation and reason is light upon light. They go together. They augment and support one another. The moment you take one away...
Understood. But at a very simple level, how... I just want to reflect on this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. So how do you read in the name of your Lord? So when you say read in the name of your Lord, when you say you're invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking, are you saying, I bear witness that I understand there is an unseen power called Allah? Is that what we're saying?
Well, partly, but I think I kind of understand where you're getting to in the question, which is it's saying read. And if I was to a child to read, they just read what's written. And it's written by somebody who has an agenda, or, you know, who the author has a specific way of thinking about something. Now, if the Quran is saying, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and it's telling the Prophet to read something specific, it means that there's something in that thing that he's reading which is going to be a benefit to people, or to him, or to the nation, for example. And what will come out when we'll talk about this is the way that Allah tells the Prophet to read, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, in the name of your Lord. So in other words, there is this acknowledgement that you can gather information, garner information, collect information from different sources, as we said. You can do scientific experimentation, you can do longitudinal research, you can sit and just watch people. You know, there's many ways that you can feel, you can close your eyes, you can listen. So many ways you can gain information, and so many different ways you can read. You can read from different authors, and all that's being said here is read in the name of who? It's like Iqra bismi rabbika, and at that point it's becoming very important because it's your Lord. The calling card is from who? The book is from your Lord. Rabb in Arabic, it is kind of related to this meaning of the one that is, you know, in a deep sense, nurturing you. You know, in this, one of the oldest lines of Arabic poetry actually has the word tarbiyah, and the root in it, ربيته ومثل الفرخ أعظمه متاعا وترى في جلده زغبا. It's a famous poem of an old Arab woman who is, you know, pre-Islamic period, and she's complaining about her child who is now, you know, chastising her and being rude to her. And she says, ربيته ومثل الفرخ, I brought him and nurtured him while he was like a small, you know, sapling, like a small bird. And he was something that required food and just wanted things and was always needy. And he had these kind of, you know, these kind of, you know, when a bird's born, it has these kind of fuzzy feathers. So at that point, the mother's nurturing it, giving it nourishment. And so Allah is saying, Iqra, in the name of what? Not in the name of J.K. Rowling, in the name of, you know, a specific author or a specific mindset. Rabbik. Iqra bismi rabbika. And so at that point, you're thinking, oh, this is actually important because the one that wants what's best for me, and tarbiyah means that, the one that is nourishing you, nurturing you, building you up. And we called murabbi, you know, in Arabic, modern Arabic, and, you know, in Jamaat Islami and Ikhwan, they have this concept of murabbi. Murabbi is this person who is taking you by the hand and taking you through the development as a person of use to the community, as murabbi. And Allah is not that. Allah is Ar-Rabb, the one that is sustaining, protecting, providing, and, you know, in every single sense you can say, helping the human being reach its goal. At that moment, it's like the priorities change, because whatever you're going to read now is going to be more important than anything else you're going to read.
Iqra bismi rabbik. So it's an indication of the author of the book that you're going to read.
Author, but also the calling card of the author. Like if somebody comes to your front door and gives you a letter. Now it could just be the postman. You're going to think it's not really that important. If the bailiffs come, they will give you a calling card. I don't know if it's still the case, but you'll get a card saying you've received this summons or whatever. Like this is important. And so when Allah says Iqra bismi rabbika, that the calling card is okay. You can't just ignore this, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't just say, okay, there's another feeling I'm getting of reflection, and, you know, the disquiet I have about the community and the way people are being treated and the injustice. This is just another reflection I'm having. The fact it's physical means you need to wake up. The fact that the letters,
and there's also qualification that who has created all that exists.
Yeah, so relative clause in Arabic, which is, you know, has a function of alladhi khalaq. just to let you know that the one is sustaining you couldn't sometimes is not the one that has created you, brought you into being. So just in case, I mean, this is like in Arabic, this is something that is required to clarify an ambiguity. So a relative clause is usually used for that. And so the murabbi has numerous qualities, doesn't bring you into existence. You don't owe the murabbi anything. You don't owe anything to that person. But the Rabb is important. And just to emphasize that, the Quran says, Alladhi khalaq, who created. Now, the moment that Allah says not created, it doesn't say what. Alladhi khalaq has the potentiality to create, has the power to create, has the volition, choice, freedom to create. That is the one that is going to ask you to read. And so all of a sudden, imagine you've got 1,000 books on the table. That book becomes like pretty important, for all intended purposes, but you would say the most important because this book is from the author of you, the one that is concerned about you, the one that is, has the ultimate happiness that you have, you fight for in your life at the very core of its message, the Quran. And so then all of a sudden you have to take it seriously. The Prophet started to take it seriously to the point that, when we come to speak about what happened after the revelation, he took it seriously to the point it affected him, because this is not just a reflection. This is words that I'm asked to read, and when the Prophet is asked to read, he starts to read. So this is the fascinating thing. He says, I can't read, what should I read? All this thing, it doesn't make any sense because I can't read. There's nothing to read. It doesn't make any human sense at all. But the moment he gives in, he starts to recite something. And this is why Iqra doesn't just mean to read. And this is what the fascinating thing about this whole chapter is, that Iqra also means to recite. And so the fixation we have, because we're a culture that reads, meaning deciphering signs, Iqra at a deeper level also means to intonate and to articulate sounds through yourself, which are speech, Iqra. And so at that moment, he gives in and he starts to move his tongue with what's in his heart, sallallahu. And then he starts to just have this outpouring of revelation that comes from him. He doesn't know how. And even the books that we have describe how the revelation came, how he met the angel in different forms, how he was able to articulate and retain what he had. But essentially, what it is for us is the sense that at a certain point, our minds actually has no purpose, has no capacity to fathom certain things. And all we're left to do is reflect over the content of the Quran specifically.
Inshallah, we'll carry the story when Prophet ﷺ received this revelation and what he did, where he went, and who consoled him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. After this ad break, inshallah.
जो सर्वसर है कलाम रब्बी, वो मेरे आका की जिंदगी है.
For the soul.
रास्ते कितने ही मुश्किल क्यों ना हो, जब कोई साथ दे तो मंजिल मिल ही जाती है। गजाली एजुकेशन ट्रस्ट गुज़श्ता 25 सालों से लाखों बच्चों को स्कूल में ला चुका है। आपकी मदद से पाकिस्तान आगे बढ़ सकता है, हर बच्चा पढ़ सकता है।
دنیا کو جگانا ہے سب کو بتانا ہے رمضان میں مسلوں کو راستہ دکھانا ہے With years of experience and an extensive portfolio, Shield Associates provide an excellent accountancy and bookkeeping service. So if numbers and deadlines are giving you a hard time, come along to our office on 215 Albert Drive. Shields Associates, the accountants you can trust.
The famous Jasset's Halal Pies are finally available in Scotland. Freshly baked Jasset's Halal Pies come in 12 mouth-watering varieties, like steak pies, chicken and mushroom pies, and cheese and onion pasties. Also a variety of ready meals. There's something for the whole family, and all HMC certified. At House of Halal and other good outlets. House of Halal, 76 Tradeston Street, Glasgow, G5 8DZ.
Radio Ramadan 365. Sound for the soul.
وہ نبیوں میں رحمت لقب پانے والا اسی سے ہے اسلام کا بول بالا وہ نبیوں میں رحمت لقب پانے والا اسی سے ہے اسلام کا بول بالا وہ سر چشمہ نور فتح مبین ہے وہی مشعل راہ عزم و یقین ہے اسی سے ہمارے دلوں میں اجالا اسی سے ہے اسلام کا بول بالا وہ نبیوں میں رحمت لقب پانے والا اسی سے ہے اسلام کا بول بالا اسی
پڑھو اے نبی کہ اپنے رب کے نام کے ساتھ جس نے پیدا کیا جمے ہوئے خون کے ایک لوتھڑے سے انسان کی تخلیق کی پڑھو اور تمہارا رب بڑا کریم ہے جس نے قلم کے ذریعے سے علم سکھایا انسان کو وہ علم دیا جسے وہ نہ جانتا تھا سورہ علق ریڈیو رمضان کے پروگرام ریفلیکشنز میں میرے مہمان شیخ رضوان محمد کے ساتھ گفتگو ہے سورہ علق اور اسلامی اقدار کو کس طرح سے اس صورت نے شیپ اپ کیا ہے یا بلکہ وہی نے انسانی جو اقدار ہیں اس کو کس طرح سے بنایا ہے سنوارا ہے اور جہاں جہاں انسانیت نے وہی کی نفی کی ہے وہاں وہاں کے نتائج کس قدر گھنونے ہیں اور جب انسانیت نے اللہ کی وحی کو مانا اور اللہ کے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم اور انبیاء کی دکھائی ہوئی رستے کو چنا دیکھا اور اس پہ عمل کیا تو وہاں سے جو سویلائزیشن نکلتی ہے اس کا فرق اس سویلائزیشن سے جو کہ خدا بیزار ہو یا خدا کو نہ ماننے والی ہو تو یہ ہے چھوٹی سی سمری کہ جو ہم اس پروگرام میں لے کے چل رہے ہیں کہ اللہ رب العزت کی وحی نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے ذریعے سے جو ہم تک پہنچی اس کی بدولت انسانیت کس طرح سے ایک اچھی کامیاب اور مطمئن زندگی گزار سکتی ہے اس بریک سے پہلے میں نے شیخ سے پوچھا کہ وہ سٹوری کہ جس میں نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم پہ پہلی وحی آئی اور اس پہلی وحی کے نتیجے میں نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا ریاکشن کیا تھا ان کے خوف کا عالم کیا تھا اور پھر اس خوف کو لیے ہوئے جب وہ گھر پہنچتے ہیں تو ان کو دلاسا دینے والی شخصیت کون تھی سو شیخ just want to get to this point here this wahi and the relationship of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his wife
generally know that this kind of story the revelation. I mean, this is why the chapter sometimes I think people take for granted, because they know the Prophet received revelation. He was confronted by the angel and ordered to recite, and he came back after having spent those days that he had used to take in seclusion, came back fearful of the experience. I mean, startled, I would say, and fearful for his own existence in some way, because it's sometimes outside the ordinary. And anybody having experienced that won't just try and make sense of it. They'll go back and they'll feel that they cannot do anything. And the Prophet ﷺ famously, after the first 5 verses are revealed, he goes back to his wife Khadija al-Kubra radiyallahu anha, who he's been married to for over a decade now.
15 years, yeah.
And yeah, so he comes and he doesn't say anything, but he says Zammiluni, Zammiluni. He just tells them, the family, it's actually a collective thing. He says, cover me, because it's almost he's not able to process it through language, so he's being asked to be consoled in some way. And obviously he does that to the people that are closest to him, which is his family. And Khadija radiallahu anha, as you know, she proposed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. They had a very fruitful, happy life, and the Prophet gave rise to a beautiful, wholesome family, alayhi salatu wasalam, with his wife. And she then becomes the person that is going to be used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the Prophet ﷺ feel at ease with the process itself. So it's almost like, if I think about it, it's almost like a midwife. A midwife is there to facilitate the process. That's it, but they're very important. They're not, they have no biological function, but they have a facilitation function. And without the midwife, you can't really have childbirth, properly speaking, without having a lot of problems. And so Khadija al-Kubra radiyallahu anha is almost like the midwife that is facilitating the revelation. And you would say, well, what's the reason for that? I mean, you could just have the person receiving it and then going out and telling people about the revelation. We take, the Quran is there for people. It goes without saying, it's there for a source of guidance for people. Even in these small things, we're given insights into how we should deal with certain things, that nothing happens without intermediaries. Nothing happens without something coming and helping and giving a hand and playing a role, however small. It's like the famous story of the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's thrown into the fire of the fire that's was created to consume him. And you have, the stories are that they have animals just taking small bits of water to try and put out the fire, and the animal has no effect in putting out the fire. Is this the intentionality of it? Is this being there and being part of that? And so Khadija radiallahu anha is there, and she's just there to give that message to people, that just because you're not part of the big narrative, it doesn't mean you don't become part of the narrative. Just because you don't have a pivotal role doesn't mean you don't have a role. And history will look back on you, perhaps, but not perhaps forget you. But Allah never forgets. And so if you're the person in life where you just make that small change in somebody's life, or you intercede for somebody, or you put in a good word for somebody, or you manage to build the bonds between two people who are never talking, just by a small off-the-cuff remark, on the Day of Judgment, that might be the most important thing you've ever done in your life. But Allah is the one that judges that. And so Khadija is there to facilitate something, and that's her role. That becomes her elevation in her own spiritual life, because to the point that the Prophet used to say to her, I received the angel Jibreel, and he sends you salam, and he grants you glad tidings of a house in paradise which has no kind of coarse noise, and no it's like noise pollution. There's nothing there that can harm you. It's safe and tranquil and still. And that's all she wanted. She wanted tranquility and stillness. She didn't want embellishments of paradise. She just wanted a place of tranquility, and that's what she was given. And what she does is not just cover him She does what he says, calms him down, but then starts to ask him what happened. And he explains what's happened, and he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, I fear that I'll be forsaken. And what's interesting is that, so he's just saying, look, this thing that's happened, it seems to be revelation from Allah, and I've been told it's a revelation from Allah, and I'm reading this Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and it means exactly what it says. And Khadija just says right away, okay, whatever you think, Allah will never disgrace you. So she says something which is not going to change history, but it's there. She's fulfilling her function. God will never disgrace you, because she mentions 4 or 5 things. She says you never break the ties of kinship. You always tell what is truthful, and you help those are poor and destitute. In other words, if you want to tick the reasons why a person would be disgraced, you're not that person. You tell the truth, you fulfill the kinds of tieship, you help people who are poor and destitute. When guests come, you're the most generous of people. And when somebody's afflicted by calamity, you're the person that's there helping them. How could you ever think that God will forsake you? The one that created you will forsake you. You be the last person that's forsaken. So
Any guidance for us and the listeners, that going back to your spouse for support, help, and also not just like advice, but just general emotional help, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is why the Quran, when the Quran talks about in terms of marriage, وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, but the Quran specifically says marriage لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So the whole purpose of marriage is to have this sense of sakina. That's embodied in the most perfect way in the story of Khadija and the Prophet ﷺ. Because at the moment that he needs tranquility and surety, she just provides it on tap. And so even confirmation, you know what you're going to do, but you just want that person to hear you and give you that surety and that confidence. That's essentially why you get married. Essentially, it has other functions, but one of the greatest ones Imam Ghazali mentions in Ihya Ulumuddin is the sense of companionship and stillness you get. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. That is one of the core reasons, if not the core reason, that you get married, is because that you start to ground yourself in the appreciation of somebody else who always has your best interests at heart. And remember, we're living in an age when marriage is understood to be extraneous to human civilization. This is why I'm saying Iqra is such a revolutionary thing, which is saying, it gives you a whole, yesterday in Taraweeh, we were going through Surah An-Nisa, and it's just fascinating reading Surah An-Nisa and hearing it. All these rules about marriage and divorce and inheritance, and you're thinking, just keep to the spiritual stuff, but that's all spiritual. If you destroy the fabric of what gives a human being sakina, which is a partner, you have destroyed society. You have decimated the society itself, because we will come to this. Insan means a social person, a social animal. Ibn Khaldun mentions it many times. The whole idea of human beings as a social animal. And so Khadija radiallahu anha, she provides that surety, the safety, and the tranquility, and then she adds that to that something which is rational. The rational mind. We're not Muslims, and not never people that are anti-rational. She does something very rational, which is, he says, look, what you've experienced is something that is talked about of previous prophets. So let's go to my relative Warqa ibn Nawfal, and he will tell you something about this. And so she has, knowledge that's going to help the Prophet ﷺ. And they go to Warqa ibn Nawfal, who is a person in Bukhari mentions that he is a person knowledgeable of the scriptures, and he explains what is happening, and they sit, and then Warqa says that this is exactly the same spirit that came to the previous prophets. And the Prophet ﷺ started to again talk about the fact that he doesn't know if he can fulfill this message, because if it's a message of prophets, we know the message of prophets is the message of Musa and Fir'aun, that Fir'aun will not take this lying down. And the Prophet knows the society is in, is not going to take this lying down. And Warqa ibn Nawfal, who's basically on his deathbed, he says, I would come to your support if only I was a person of vigor and young age. Jaza', he used the word, which is like this person of fortitude. But he wasn't. But he's just saying, look, you'll have people that will come to your support.
That's all the time we have. Inshallah, we'll be back with Sheikh Rizwan on Wednesday, but reflection will be on tomorrow and day after as well. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
Recite in the name of your Lord who created.
خلق الإنسان من علق.
Created man from a clinging substance.
اقرأ وربك الأكرم.
Recite, and your Lord is the most generous.
الذي علم بالقلم.
Who taught by the pen.
علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
Taught man that which he knew not.
كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى.
No, but indeed man transgresses.
أن رآه استغنى.
Because he sees himself self-sufficient.
إن إلى ربك الرجعى.
Indeed, to your Lord is the return.
أرأيت الذي ينهى.
Have you seen the one who forbids?
عبدا إذا صلى.
A servant when he prays.
أرأيت إن كان على الهدى.
Have you seen if he is upon guidance?
أو أمر بالتقوى.
Or enjoins righteousness?
أرأيت إن كذب وتولى.
Have you seen if he denies and turns away?
ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى.
Does he not know that Allah sees?
كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية.
No, if he does not desist, we will surely drag him by the forelock.
ناصية كاذبة خاطئة.
A lying, sinning forelock.
فليدع ناديه.
Then let him call his associates.
سندع الزبانية.
We will call the angels of hell.
كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب.
No, do not obey him, but prostrate and draw near to Allah.